Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting.
And I get the honor of being able to introduce our two guests today. If you've listened or watched any of our past episodes, these guests will not be new to you. They are my two favorite people across the pond, as they say, right? So Michael coming to us from Wexford, Ireland, and Susan coming to us from Aberdeen, Scotland. I was really lucky enough to meet them during a training and certification class that we took together online in 2020. Although COVID had many challenges and we all went through a lot that first year, they definitely were the highlight of that period of time for me, making these new friends in Michael and Susan. So I'm so excited to have them here today. They're both fellow Eat to Grow certified coaches and strengths nerds like Chad and I. They both have a background in HR, and you will hear it over and over again today about their desire to really grow, help others grow, and maximize their impact on the world. I absolutely adore them, and I know you will too. So if you haven't watched or listened yet, go back and check out our episodes on Relator, Input, Individualization, and Developer. Welcome back, Susan and Michael.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
And Jen, can you let our audience know why we've invited them back?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the CliftonStrengths talent of Maximizer. So you heard the little cue in there about how they maximize their impact on others. So we wanted to talk about that one. And so before we have Chad read the description though, tell me again where these fall for you. Michael, where is it in your top 5?
Numero uno, number 1.
Nice. And Susan, where is it for you?
Number 4.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. So we have the experts here with us. Mine is at 9. Chad, I think you said yours was pretty
mine's
low.
24. So
24,
again, this is
okay.
going to be an episode so there have been a few others where I've been sort of the which one of these people doesn't fit. At least the 3 of you have it in your top 10. Mine is 24. So I whenever I've connected with these two before, it's been a pleasure to start to hear a little bit about this theme. I'm thrilled that we're now going to do a whole episode just on this theme with them, because I'm really hoping to learn even more as along with our audience about this theme, because it's not one that I live out, or if I do, it's through other themes, other theme combos. So
great. So with that, can you read us the short description from Gallup about
Sure.
Maximizer?
So as always, we start our episode off with the short description from Gallup. People exceptionally talented in the Maximizer theme focus on strengths as a way to stimulate personal and group excellence. They seek to transform something strong into something superb. So that's the start. Now, I know normally we jump right into questions, but I know that in previous conversations I've had with Susan, she has shared something about the difference between competition, which I know we haven't done an episode on yet, but we will. Competition versus Maximizer. And I'd love for her to share that with us and with our audience, because I think it can be really telling and maybe informative to the rest of this conversation, so that people really understand the difference and where Michael and Susan are going to be talking about Maximizer versus that sort of competition side. So Susan, would you be willing to share with us a little bit about the difference between competition and Maximizer?
Sure, and I'll just read it out. And I think this came about because we were speaking about what could seem quite similar.
Yes.
And then we got into this discussion between, is there a difference?
Yeah.
So I'll just read it out. Competition and Maximizer can look a lot alike. They're both influencing themes, and both have a characteristic drivenness about them. Competition is driven to win. Maximizer is driven to be the best. But it's not about beating the competition that drives Maximizer. It is the assurance that excellence has been achieved. Maximizer compares themselves with their own bests and looks for excellence for comparison. So does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I love the difference between excellence versus an outside competitor as the big difference there. So thank you very much for sharing that. I know that will be helpful as we have the rest of the conversation, because
it does sound a little bit like competition when we talk about it. Absolutely.
Yes. So to start us off, and before we go on and on about how these two are so similar, I'm curious about how the maximizer theme really shows up in each of your lives. And I'd like to start with Michael. If you tell us a little bit about, not so much the negatives and positives, we'll get to that in a minute. And I know Jen's anxious to ask that question, but just, maybe give us some clues on some behaviors or ways that has shown up in your life. And then once Michael's done, I'd love to hear from you, Susan. And if you hear anything Michael says that you want to jump in on, feel free. But I'd like to start with Michael and then see where some of the differences and similarities are with Susan's answers. So.
Okay. So when you ask the question, how does it show up? I think it's all encompassing in the fact that it's my number one. It shows up everywhere. When I think about it in the context of personal, it's always looking for and searching for the best or better or improvements all the time. No, and notice I'm not saying perfection, because I think that's unachievable. In a work context, it shows up with me striving for quality, striving for continuous improvement, and wanting to get to mastery really, really quickly. So even in a learning capacity, learner number 10 and input number 2, I want to know as much as I can, but it's usually not just in service of me, it's in service of other people. So to bring out the best in them. I also love it from the point of view of coaching, because you're focusing in on the best parts of people, the strengths of people, pardon the pun, but the strengths of people. And that's a great place to start. You're not looking to fix them. You're looking to what makes them good, what moves them from good to greatness.
Nice.
I love that, not wanting to fix them, because I was telling Chad, I'm like, I have Maximizer, but I'm always thinking in the fixing, but that's my deliberative, like looping in there. Like I want to fix the problems and make it right. So I love that you brought that distinction, that it's not about fixing.
Yeah. Susan, what about you? What either resonates or maybe is a little different than what Michael's saying? How does this show up in your life and in your work?
Well, interestingly enough, as I was listening, of course, mine's number 4, and I have very different other themes sitting around mine than Michael has. But I sort of underscore everything that Michael just said. For me, it's really about this commitment to excellence, whatever excellence means to me, to that other person. As you said, Jen, it's not about fixing something that's broken. It's about making something that's already pretty good, focusing on the strengths, as Michael said, and making it even better, breathlessly better. And that's for me, is that feeling of just like, oh, there's something better here, and we're not dealing with issues or broken or anything like that. It's a positive energy, looking forward, looking for solutions, looking for excitement and better possibilities. And I suppose for me, it shows up in terms of I do really love working with people. I've got huge patience for people who are new at something, and seeing them develop, and developer is number 2 for me, and seeing them develop as well as myself is a real joy. And it is very much combined with this thing at number 4 that I hadn't quite appreciated, ran through the other top 5 or 6 themes quite so strongly.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm already hearing the slight differences between how it comes out with Michael. You have a lot of strategic thinking themes. I think you mentioned input there and learner. And I think on one of our other episodes, you mentioned another strategic thinking theme. I forget which one it is in your top 5. But Susan, you're talking about developer, and I think you've mentioned you have a bunch of relationship building themes in your top 5 or 10. And just noticing the nuances between, you know, the maximizing the amount of information for Michael, and then maximizing a little bit more of the personal side. Not that, Michael, you don't, but that those relationship building themes are coming to flavor, as we've mentioned in past episodes. They come in and flavor your demonstration of your maximizer. That's awesome. I want to sort of poke a little bear here. You've brought both of you, I think, brought up the word perfection. And one of the things, given that this is you have to remember, this is my number 24. So I'm really sort of batting in the dark here. Perfection, I know for me, comes from a deliberative and responsibility place. Maximizer, I hear both of you mention perfection. What is perfect enough? Like, where does perfectionism come into this whole thing? And, you know, something can always have that one more final tweak, and that endless pursuit of perfection, or that best or superb thing. How does that fit into this conversation? And if you have an insight on that, you know, then also sort of how do you overcome it? Susan, I think you were the one that brought up perfection first, so I'm going to come to you with that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I think the theme is very much about you're striving for perfection, but you never get it. I think, as Michael mentioned, and you know, and maybe we're shotting into some of the negative sides here, but it's the is good enough ever enough? And when your maximizer is in full flow, good enough is not good enough.
Okay.
And I think, you know, the term that I have used before is that sometimes I do not know when to stop polishing that turd.
Yeah.
You know, it's lovely and shiny as it is, but I can't stop. And so it can show up that way, you know, where
Okay.
that drive for perfection, but knowing that you'll never quite get there, but not knowing when to stop sometimes.
Okay. Michael, do you have any thoughts on this? Just, I'm curious about this whole perfection thing, because I know it's something Jen and I talk about a lot with our deliberative and responsibility themes coming in. So where does your take on this come from?
This, for me, is one of the biggest watchouts for me personally with Maximizer. The striving for perfection. And when I say it's not perfection, the striving for it to be better is a question that you'll often ask yourself around, well, is it good enough? And usually it's not, in my opinion. It could be better. So I know that I need to work really closely with people that have executing in their top 10 in any way, shape, or form, because I don't have any executing themes in my top 10.
Okay.
My other strategic thinking was intellection, so you can see why I went down the learning path there and the information.
Yeah.
But you know, when you talk about when you're even talking about coffee sinks and so on, when I need people in my team to let me know there's a deadline, because Maximizer, sometimes I will miss the deadline in service of going better. But then is
Okay.
that really the best thing if you miss a deadline? No. So that's where, you know, I need to be mindful of it in that regard.
Okay.
And
I didn't mean to take
just
Jen.
bouncing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Susan. What?
So just bouncing off what Michael said in terms of it sort of struck me as well. I think for me the one executing theme I have in my top 5, achiever, number 3. I think that helps pull me out of a hole, because it goes
Okay.
from you know, like polishing everything to this needs to be done. And then that beautiful tick that you can give yourself on your list to say, oh, look, And that's the best tick I can do.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry, I cut
I
across you,
don't
Chad.
No, I was
Susan, oh sorry. I just to add on, sorry, Chad.
no.
Because I don't have any executing, that is where, I don't even, when you mention about having the tick, that tick doesn't excite me. So
Mhm.
my excitement comes from working at it being better and better and better. So again, coming back to working with people, it's focusing in on what they bring and what we bring from each other. Because as
Yeah.
a maximizer, I'm going to be bringing the best version at that time, but I'm always going to want to improve it.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I was just as I wasn't meaning to steal Jen's thunder with it or with our next question. We seem to have already gone to some of the negative impacts, but
Well,
it's something I've wrestled with talking to people with Maximizer, trying to coach them, and because you brought up this sort of ongoing pursuit of better and better and better,
Excellence.
and it almost starts to sound or seeking that perfection. I was just wondering how that kind of plays out. And then I know we often talk about that sort of how do we overcome things a little later on in a lot of our episodes, but I really appreciate you tackling that very loaded question at the very beginning of this, so thank you. Jen, do you want to keep us going with that
Yeah,
next
absolutely.
usual question around this thing?
Sure. And what I liked about that too was that both of them said that it wasn't necessarily about whether it's like perfect or whatever, but that it's right. It was that like drive to do it right, to make it great, to strive for excellence. So I think that's a really interesting distinction too, because it speaks to my responsibility. My responsibility likes that, like we're going to do the right thing. So in doing it right and getting it done correctly is better than getting it done fast and doing it wrong. So I think that's like that flip to the competition, right? And that was what I heard in that too, was that, yeah, competition might win. They might get to the finish line first, but was it right when they got there? Like, did they cheat or did they, like strive for the excellence in it? So I like how these all are going together. All right, on to the question, sorry. So I want to talk now about how we know that these themes like can pull us into negative directions. Michael already touched on that a little bit, and Susan did too, about how we can kind of get stuck in this and in a raw state, or maybe like we're just ramped up, our maximizers get too excited and can't stop polishing. What are some of the negative impacts of that have happened in your life? I'm sorry, I didn't say who. Michael, can you share with us first what some of those
I really thought you were going to ask Susan to go there. So thank you for that.
Sorry.
No, that's all. I suppose where it comes up in I suppose, and I don't like the word negative, so I'm going to say an unhelpful way. Okay,
Yes.
There you
so
go.
Yep.
where it can be unhelpful is where I'm asked for an opinion. So, Michael, what do you think? And I might give an answer that, I don't know, it could take the wind out of the person's sails, because I'm coming about it from the point of view of this is what I would do, as opposed to sometimes listening to where they're coming from. Susan, I think you've alluded to this before, the point where their better is their best. But we can sometimes critique and too quickly,
Okay.
and it can come off snobby. And by snobby I mean I know better than you.
Oh, okay.
And that's where it's being received that way, but that's never the intention of a maximizer, because their intention is to come from a place of making it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had said, I think even at the beginning, about celebration, and maybe it's some from another conversation that we've had, but that it's really hard to celebrate the win in the moment because you're thinking about what next time could be. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in service of going to better, to better again, I can struggle sometimes to celebrate the win. So, yes, it's great that that was done, but let's be better next time at the next thing we need to do. We're straight into what worked well, what didn't. You know, these are questions I would ask myself even after coaching sessions. What worked well there? What worked, what worked for the client? What didn't work so well? All in service of being better the next time. Now, my clients will often say to me, Michael, there's no such thing as a lazy question, but I will say, I know this question sounds a bit lazy. And they were like, no, it's a great question. But to me, as a maximizer, wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. Susan, where have you noticed that your maximizer is maybe less helpful than you would like that to be?
Yeah, when I've been thinking about it, like so many places. From a work perspective, I think, as Michael said there, in terms of trying to get things better and right. If anyone's ever asked me to red pen or edit something for them, I have learned now to say, do you really want me to do that? Because give it to me and I'll do it. But you can quite easily crush somebody with something that's really good, but you're just giving them back that, oh, I think this could and this could. And depending on who they are and what's going on for them, that can be quite demoralizing. So I've seen that happen. I'm quite good at that. I think also on the work front, particularly because of my focus through Maximizer, and I think positive too as well, on strengths. I really, really feel that focusing on there and getting that better is the way to do it. But that can really frustrate people who have got an inclination more to get into what needs fixed, what's negative, the analytical side. So again, I have to watch what I'm doing, who I'm interfacing with there. And from a personal perspective, I think I've shared with you before, but my family have bought me a wine glass, and on it says Mrs. Always Right, because nothing that is wrong gets left unchallenged in my and again, I think you're maybe a little bit less mindful when you're dealing with your family, and therefore the raw talents maybe show up a little bit more. But just so you know, I've hidden it at the back of the cupboard, and I may have to accidentally smash it because I'm trying really hard not to do that. But we will see.
Michael, tell us what
I was going to say the same thing.
I'm laughing because when you talk about being gifted things, and I've just realized behind me is a gift from a friend. That really encapsulates Maximizer, and I've just copped onto it now. I'm going to show you. It says, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss. And when I think of Paulina, a really good friend of mine who gave me that gift, we had set up a learning and development department together, long story short, but it was like everyone came to me to ask me, well, what's the best way for it to be done? What way would you do it? And it was like, oh, I'll ask Michael, he's the boss, because the maximizer is going to give it the best shot. So I think the gift came from a place of positive intent, but I just realized how much it actually applies to maximizing right there, right now.
Michael,
I don't think my gift was a positive place. I've been told something.
Well, it was positive if it had wine in the glass when it was given to you.
Michael, what you just mentioned about sort of being handed not so much gifts, but things to do reminds me of a previous conversation you and I have had about, I think you'd mentioned at some point where, I forget if it was in your personal life or in your professional life, but where people would just continually load you with the things to do because they're like, well, I don't even need to do this because Michael's going to come along and fix it all over again. So why should I even start? I should just load his plate with all the things to do. Could you just, I know I kind of
Yeah,
gave the theme there,
I
but
know where you're
I
going.
don't know if you
I know
want
where
to
you're
add
going with
anything to
this.
that.
I
Because
know
you
where
were
you're
talking about
going with
negative.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed how you said Michael will fix it, and I said no,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. Michael will
Right.
make it better. So
Better. Yep.
Okay.
that's your but yes, I think what I was saying to you previously, Chad, was, in relationships, for example, whether it's family or marriage, or it's like, well, why should I even try, is what the other person will say, if you're going to take it and make it better
Yeah.
in
Not
that
fix it.
way. Yeah, not
Not fix
necessarily
it.
fix it,
Yeah.
but you have to remember, it's like, and this is really a belief system that I have about all maximizers. If you're giving them something to do, they're giving their best shot. It to them, it might not necessarily be their best, but they're always coming to the table with the best
Mm.
that they have at that moment. Where you have to be careful is sometimes there could be close to, I don't like to use the term burnout, but they might not enforce their boundaries because they want to
Yeah.
be better. And therefore, they need people in their lives to take away some of the responsibility, something I don't have in my top 10, by the way, but to take my, or that desire, let's stick with the language of maximizer, that desire to be better.
Got
Because
it.
it's okay. It really is okay to not have it to the best it needs to be. Everything is a learning journey in that regard. I
Nice.
spoke to you previously about some friends who are neurodivergent, may have ADHD, and on the spectrum in relation to autism. And before they're in business, and they post something and there'll be a spelling mistake, and I'm cringing for them. But does it really matter? Does it matter? No. The message that they got out mattered. And that's where maximizer impact is better than maximizer getting nitty gritty into the detail.
Yeah.
Mm.
Nice. Thank you very much for going a little further. I knew that I was missing a few pieces, so I appreciate that.
And that brings up a question for me personally, and maybe this is a good thing for the maximizers, our big maximizers, to answer for us, because I struggle with starting something sometimes, but love to finish it. Now I hear my achiever in there, or make it better, or I'm like, so this may be tough, but do you like to start at the ground and make something great and keep continuing to make it better, or do you prefer to get some, like, a start from someone and then be able to work to make it better? This is both of you, whoever wants to speak up first. Susan's being allowed.
And I suspect, I wonder whether Michael and I might be a bit different in this. I'm probably more of the give me something that's already there,
Okay.
because
Okay.
I don't have ideation that high. I'm not the one for the ideas, but give me something that is formed, and that I'll take that and I'll do my very best with it.
Nice.
So I'm probably more of that side, and I just wonder, I'm curious whether Michael might come to it slightly differently.
No, exactly the same
No?
as you. Exactly the same as you. Give me something that I already think is worth investing in.
Oh,
Because
good.
because if it's something that's right at the beginning, it might not necessarily be worth investing in. Well, for me, for some like Susan, it's like there's a building block there already that I feel I could make a little bit better or add value to in that space. So Susan, very
Nice.
similar.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Right.
Thanks for indulging my question there. It was one of those things that it caught me when I was thinking about this one, and I'm like, maybe they would prefer to polish rather than create. So I guess
But
that
what you
was
said
kinda
about sometimes not wanting to start, I recognize that. I
yeah.
can procrastinate. And I think what Michael just said about having something there that's already formed has been, it's quite illuminating actually. The things that I've got something clearly that's worth investing in, I'm not bothered. I'm happy to get going. The bits that I'm just not so sure at, that's where I can procrastinate until I just go get that achiever out of the cupboard and let's get going.
Yeah. Okay, so let's flip this because you guys have gone there already on me. Even when I'm trying to talk about where things are in the way. Now let's really like get to the meat of this. How has this theme, Susan, helped you or benefit your life and work? Like, where do you see it shine? And you cannot squash that maximizer. It's so powerful and so strong and makes you wonderful at what you do, personal and professional.
So interestingly, the first reaction I have is wonderful at what I do. Surely I could be a bit better. So that was the first thing. But if we take the positive intent meant behind that, I think for me, I would like to think that I'm known as somebody who, you give me something to do, I'll do it with quality. Yeah. I have high standards for myself. I have high standards for other people. Flipping back to the negative side, got to watch that bit sometimes. Yeah. But I've got high standards. I do really love when I'm working with somebody and they can suddenly unlock for themselves that there is more that they can do, can be, which they maybe hadn't managed before. And that's again the quality and the standards sort of side of things. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, it's about that, and the kind of the forward energy that I feel is part of the maximizer theme.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, how about you? Where do you see this shine?
I think of my tagline in my business, and it says helping individuals, teams, and organizations to become future fit. And even the chapter coach, it's very, there's a story to it. It can always be better. Each chapter can be better. To be future fit, you've got to continuously improve. And I wasn't in strengths when I came up with those taglines, and now when working with strengths for the last number of years, seeing how they were playing a part in my life already is wow. But for Matt, going back to this question, I suppose I'm always going to try and present and give you the best version of me. So and what I mean by that is there's a quality to the conversation. If I show up ready. If I show up, I'm here to, and I know there's other strengths like individualization and relator at play there as well. But it is, I want you to know that my maximizer will influence you and me. There's a co-creation to the conversation. And I love when a client gets an aha moment from a question that you ask them. And as a maximizer, you already knew that that's what they were that's what they needed to do. But you have to stay quiet to honor the coaching conversation. But when they get it, it's like a double aha, because it's like, yes, that's what I knew you could do. And that's what they are doing. So there is that element to it. And I work with people who are maximizers, and they're great for having a debate with about what is the best approach.
Very interesting. Nice. What I heard you say in there, and you've said it before, is that everything is about the impact. Can you go deeper into that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ripple effect. I think it's the quote by Mother Teresa, what a stone casts in and the ripple effect of that on the pond and so on. When I'm coaching, or even when I'm talking to people and family and even friends here today, when I'm asking a question, I'd often say, but what's the impact of that decision going to be? Not just on you, but on everybody else. There's a bigger picture at play with a maximizer. It's the impact not just on the individual, but on everyone. And I think
Nice.
that's
And
what we're
also
looking.
adding to that, Michael, I think it's also not just on the today, but also on to tomorrow.
Yeah.
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 That's a thread I feel I need to highlight, because everything you said has been all about forward and future and what comes next. I think we've talked a little bit about this in the deliberative is what's happened, what are the risks, what risk did we see the last time that we need to be aware of next time, and everything with this theme that you've highlighted so far has had that what comes next, what's the next thing we can do. You mentioned future forward or future fit. I think that's really enlightening, again, for somebody that doesn't live Maximizer, particularly
But again, I
high
think
in my life.
The interesting thing is that futuristic for me is like 21 or something.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more kind of like grounded in today,
Right.
but leaning towards tomorrow. And the
very
next
much
day,
so.
the next day.
Yeah, but even still, even that, even if it's grounded in today, everything I've heard you say is, well, what's that next thing that can make this better or more impact, whatever. So I
100%.
wanted to highlight that for our listeners.
And Susan, I'm futuristic number 34. So the fact that I talk in future, I know is being led by Maximizer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a really good point to make, because you do sound like you're very, very future thinking, future forward, future focused. Nope, just next time.
Yeah.
Love it.
But futuristic, I think, is more, when you think of it from a strengths perspective, it is more of a long-term futuristic approach. While as with Maximizer, it's what's the impact of the next 10 minutes or the next day. It doesn't necessarily have to be in 5 years' time.
No, and I think that goes back to Susan's point about it's that future leaning. Both of you have brought it up in different ways. Michael, you said, well, what's the next session with them going to look like? How am I going to do that just a little bit better next time? Susan, you just kept coming back to that, future leaning. It's right there at the precipice. It's, standing in the moment, but then leaning forward into that next conversation or that next moment where you have an opportunity to polish or red pen something. It's still based in the present, but has that inclination to the future. So I love that we dissected the futuristic there a little bit. That futuristic is that 5-10 year view. You're talking about Maximizer having a forward leaning, but it's much more that grounded in the present. So I think that's a great distinction. It helps people understand the theme better, because this is why I have that. Well, what's next? And they're they might be like Michael and have futuristic as 32, 33, 34. Why am I thinking this? It's potentially a Maximizer trait, Maximizer talent. So you've actually kind of brought us right into the next question that Jen and I always love to ask. We know from coaching and from everything Gallup shares about how themes get developed and how they get used. We're never utilizing our themes in silo, right? They're always interacting. And so I have two key questions. Michael, I'm going to come to you first with this first question. We've already started talking about some of the themes that intersect with your Maximizer. I'm curious if you could highlight for a moment some of the ones that you really think add to the true success of your Maximizer. So what do you couple with Maximizer to have an even bigger impact, to use your word, on whether it's your clients or the professional life in the past, maybe it's relationships, people you work with. What comes to play with Maximizer?
My number 2 and 3. Number 2, input. Number 3, individualization. So input is, give me all that information, because then I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it in some way, shape, or form to make the best better. When I think about it in terms of individualization, it's seeing the uniqueness of everybody, that everyone is like, I believe everybody is just amazing, super. And that's the place I come from. So to see somebody and, leaning into individualization and hold space for them to be better helps my maximizer and helps them. I'm going to use a word here you guys love, achieve more.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Susan, what about for you? What themes come to play to accelerate your success with Maximizer?
There's three that I'm going to pick up, but first of all, I kind of clocked why I love working with Michael, his input stuff, which, give him something, he comes back with something really great, and then you can work on it again. How exciting. For me, there was kind of three of the surrounding themes, I think, that really sort of triggered the Maximizer, things that work really well. The first one being achiever at number 3. And that is really sort of coupling the need for quality, for excellence, but also getting stuff done.
Yeah.
So, sometimes the balance is a bit funky, but actually those two that work together means that you can get good results. So that's the first one. Second one is developer. And I think developer and maximizer, that's not just from a personal perspective, but also from working with other people. Being able to work with somebody from a positive perspective, help them see, a better whatever it is for them, and them going on, as Michael said, them having those aha moments and doing it. God, that's just joyous.
Yeah.
That's absolutely joyous. And developers now my number 2. And the third one that I think works really well with Maximizer is positivity. Because there is this need for the Maximizer to work in the language of strengths that we now use through CliftonStrengths. But even before I knew anything about CliftonStrengths, that's where I would prefer to work, is in the positives, in the strengths, in the head up, looking forward kind of view of the world, than head down in the deep. It's like, let's go. It's a great world out there. Let's go and do it.
Making
I
the
think those
good great.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
great.
Right? Yeah.
Michael,
So I think those three are the ones.
yeah, Michael, I saw you nodding your head along. Was there something else you wanted to add to what Susan was saying, or maybe another theme that came to mind?
It's just where Susan and I have similarities in terms of our working, context around HR being, a profession. And Susan, I'm just interested, as you spoke there, I kind of said, in HR, you sometimes people at their worst, and in coaching, you see people at their best. And there's a real balance there. And when I say people at their worst, not all people at their worst, but I'm just saying you're usually coming in a HR capacity because something is wrong, or needs to be better. But with coaching, depending on the context, they're coming in and they're ready for a bit of change, or they're really positive about something that they want to move forward with. Jesus, there's that language again, move forward with, and moving in that space. So, Susan, this is really just a question for you. What's your thoughts on what I just said around HR and coaching from a maximizer perspective?
Well, no, so no.
Just trying to maximize our answer right now.
Yeah.
I think you're actually bang on. And when I look back at my sort of 30 years in HR, which are the bits that gave me energy? And those are the pieces where there were other people involved and also looking to do their best. However, even in the really difficult situations that we would, have to work at in HR, I always had this feeling that even if it was a horrible situation, if we could do whatever it is with professionalism and integrity and respect, then we're doing our best.
Yeah.
So, whether we're talking about really horrid stuff, redundancies or death in services or all that kind of stuff, people say to me, how can you do it? And I'm like, you've got to do your best for that. And that's where the satisfaction if you can call it that, for me came as long as I knew
Yeah.
I was doing my best, even though it was a horrible thing that was happening.
I really love
Uh,
that you said that, because an old boss of mine used to say, Michael, are you happy that if it ended up on the front of the newspaper that you've done the best job that you could do? And once I got to that stage where I could stand in front of a judge around the decision that I made, my maximizer was satisfied, even though the
mhm.
situation could have been
Yeah,
horrible.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, I just took over the
Oh, it's
podcast show and
okay.
started asking
Yeah.
Susan questions.
Just making it
Apologies.
better,
No,
making it
no,
better.
it was excellent. We love, and it was one of those things that I knew that this would happen because you two are so fantastic this way. So I wanted to jump into kind of our next question, which is really about witnessing this theme, either coming out in yourselves in different ways, or maybe others that you've coached, where you might have seen a maximizer, someone with maximizer high also partnering that with a different talent than what you have, and just seeing it, you know, in a different light than the way you experience your maximizers. Do either of you have any examples?
Michael, did you have one?
I I love the way Jen is not asking me or you.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, well, whatever Susan says, mine's gonna be better. And she's probably thinking the very same. She's probably thinking the same. No,
Okay, so
I'm
Michael,
only kidding.
Michael,
Okay.
do you have an example for us?
So just give me the question one more time, please.
If you know or have worked with another client that also has maximizer, but maybe it shows up differently for them a little bit based on some of their other talents, some kind of unique pairings you might have seen with maximizer that make it look different than yours and Susan's, and some of the things.
Yeah, I mean, I work really closely with Kira, who's got maximizer and connectedness. Now I've got it too, but she has connectedness quite high. And maximizer and connectedness, what I see is there's it's not just the impact of decisions. It's like there's a whole other thing going on as
Mm,
well. So universal. It's like there's a not necessarily spiritual, but for this person it may be, but that there's for every decision or for everything we do, there's a bigger thing at play. And it's a lovely thing to witness because they're coming from the maximizer place around impact, but also they're seeing it even bigger than what I would because my
Yeah.
connectedness wouldn't be as high as theirs.
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, really interesting. And knowing Kira, I could see that too, and it makes me love her even more. How
And then she's
amazing.
got futuristic, so she's already there 5 years ahead.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So Kira will work in the on the why, the what, and how of an organization, their vision, their strategy. And Michael's going, I'm happy to just coach them in the here and now, if that's
Right.
all right with you. And so that's what you have to be mindful of. You're showing up for again, maximizer show. How can I show up in the best possible way to serve the client?
Yeah.
Just in terms of serving our audience, could you just clarify who Kara is? I know the
Oh,
four of us
yes.
know
Oh,
who she
sorry.
is.
Sorry,
No, it's like,
Kira
Yes.
Kira is the founder and managing director of a company called Futureneers, who I'm an associate with. And
nice.
she's a really good friend of mine as well. We trained together as coaches back in 2015.
Yeah. I
So
know she's an awesome part of our Eat and Grow
Oh,
community.
yes,
I just
right.
thought our listeners might be like, who's this Kara character? She's not on screen. She's
reach
not on.
out to her. Her connectedness will love it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
Kat, thank you for that.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
it
it's-
completely went past me. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no one else would know who she is.
Right. No,
Thank
I
you.
I understood because of the context of our conversation that we're all part of the Eat
Yeah.
and Grow community
Right.
of coaches. And she's a wonderful human being. I have actually not met her personally yet, but I know her name and I know some of her work. But I just thought we've got a bunch of listeners who doesn't know who this fifth person is. So thank you
Yeah.
very much, Michael.
Susan, did you have any unique pairings that you've seen in any of your coaching with Maximizer and others?
Well, actually, it was sort of striking me that Michael said there about, "Oh, I'll do better than him," sort of thing. No, I think what he said was, "I have no competition. competition's down there somewhere. He did a lovely example. So I don't think I've got anything that's like really insightful. Although I did have a look at my cascade sheet to see, you know, who in their top 5 had Maximizer, and very few of my clients to date have had that.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I haven't quite come to a conclusion why, but it's like, oh, right, I just hadn't thought about it. So that's not really answering your question. It's just an
It's
observation.
okay.
Well,
It's okay.
I'd actually like to build on that for a second, because I did the same sort of thing. I took a look at, you know, the number of people that I've come in contact with. Not all of them have been direct coachees. A lot of them have been, you know, workshop participants that I just have them for that one workshop. So you really don't, I haven't had a chance to really go deep with them. But of the 300 or so that I have in my cascade, only 24 or 25 had Maximizer in their top 5. And so I think for those listening to this episode, I think it's valuable to realize that this is a relatively, I'm sure Gallup's got all sorts of data on this that I'm not going to bother them for, as much as my analytical would love to, but I get the sense that it is a not as common theme. And so, you know, when we think about coaching them, it's not as often that we get a chance to do so. It's also for the companies and the teams that have them, boy, take advantage, because you've got a rare gem on your hands. And as we've already talked about through this whole episode, they can bring some real power and impact, to use both of your words. You've used impact a lot. So I think that would be my one small contribution to this part of our conversation about, you know, the unique ways that the rarity of it is, that it is something that, not that the other themes aren't valuable, but this is a particularly rare gem, because it doesn't show up all that often. So that'd be my one piece. Jen, did you have anything? I didn't mean to sort of take on that conversation, but is there anything else you want to add? Have you coached some people with sort of slightly different versions of Maximizer?
In all of them, it's always been this like strive to make things better. And in my lens, I will say the Maximizer for me at 9, I do count it as, you know, my top like tools to use. I will say mine is about fixing it or making it right. So my Maximizer is constantly striving to make it right. Maybe not better isn't like the right word. And like we've already commented on, for me, it's fixing. But normal, like true maximizers aren't looking at the fixing as much as the making great. So it's that like just tilt of the lens through my responsibility. I think it's coming from there. Yeah. That's all.
Nice. So with that wonderful part of our conversation, I want to turn this a little on the lighter side. You know, we've done this with all our other episodes. I'm curious, for those that are first either learning about the Maximizer, or maybe it's a colleague or a you know, personal relation that is trying to understand this theme. Sometimes we can do that through more common references, whether it's household objects, certain images. Jen and I have used pop culture references before. I'm wondering, as two people that live with this, and Susan, if you want to put on your thinking cap first, I might come to you first with this. I'm curious if there's an image or reference visual that you might offer up for people to start to understand this theme, even at a very basic level, or might an image or pop culture reference that might encapsulate this theme.
So I've got a few things running around my head, as per usual. And I think in terms of an image, there's not a particular image, but there's something about that future. You're standing there looking to the future. It's bright, it's shiny, it's warm, it's positive, it's full of potential. So it's that piece. There's also a little bit of, you know, like in trying to temper it. The phrase about, you know, like cooling your jets. Sometimes we just have to cool our jets there on that particular one, but it's a very positive place that's there. And in terms of pop culture, Michael and I were speaking about this, that I had originally thought Tina Turner simply the best.
Nice.
And then I thought, well, no, it's not. Because then the next line is better than all the rest.
Yeah.
And I don't care about that.
All right.
So part of it works for me, part of it doesn't. And then the other one that kind of when we were chatting kind of came, and it's more about the negative side, is about the Frozen piece about, let it go.
Let it go.
Oh, let it go. Okay.
Stop, let it go, move on, get it done.
Nice.
So those are my thoughts.
All right.
Ramblings.
They're all awesome.
Awesome.
I think our listeners will resonate with at least one of those. And I want to come to Michael to see what images or thoughts he has around starting to connect with this theme. What people might reference.
So I'm leaning into my input to answer this question. So
All right.
I'm not going to go with an image or a pop reference, or I'm going to just go with a simple quote that I think summarizes Maximizer for me. And you've probably heard of Mark Twain, but he mentions in one of his quotes, he's knocking around a while anyway, but he says continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection.
Ooh.
And I really like that because it's the continuous improvement piece that really is what Maximizer for me is all about. But the fact that he talks about that delayed perfection, it's like Maximizers have to get going, even though it may never be perfect, and it shouldn't be, because if it was perfect, then it doesn't need to be improved. That's where that really resonates for me. So it's a quote this time, guys.
No, awesome. I won't speak for Jen, but I know my deliberative responsibility goes, yep, that's
Yep.
that also comes to play with those two themes too, especially when they get together.
And there's another quote from a Kasabian song, I think it is, but she being trendy. And something like, we're not here for a long time, we're here for a good time.
Oh.
So
right.
That's a bit of a Maximizer bit as well in terms of it's good. It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Excellent. Jen, do you want to take us to our next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we think about how others might best interact with their Maximizer, what advice could you give to team leaders or peers who are seeing, maybe either they have Maximizer themselves, or maybe let's look at it more from the lens of they have someone on their team who has Maximizer high, and you want to help them maybe come out of that raw application, that they are in that place where they want that perfection, they're seeking that excellence, they can't stop polishing. What's some advice you might give, Michael? What's some advice you might give to help them maybe pull out of that? You have a specific saying that you've used before with us.
Yeah, like for me, it's about leaning, getting someone else to support them in that space. I really feel, and this is with other maximizers that I've worked with, we need to have someone on the team that will take us along and go, you're doing a really good job. Let's get this done now so that we all do a really good job. And that's where a maximizer will take the focus off themselves and the good that they're doing and go, oh, there's an impact piece here that needs to happen. And this is what my team needs from me. So now it's time to give them where I've gotten up to. I think any team that has a maximizer in it, whether it's raw or mature, they're in a really good place having a maximizer there because their intention is to want to be better. So even when that intention could in fact be a blind spot, it's knowing that as a team leader or somebody that you're coaching, that that's not really where they're coming from. They just possibly haven't fully explored the beauty of Maximizer.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And you even touched on some of that recognition, like recognizing that they, you know, are doing a great job. Susan, do you have anything to add to that? Like helping someone come out of that raw application or how?
I think you said the word there for me that's really important is the recognition.
Yeah.
You know, recognizing, and I suppose it's the same for a lot of the themes, but I think particularly for Maximizer, recognizing that your contribution is valued, and also saying, you know, this is good enough for now. Choose your battles of which standards you want to go for. Just, you know, this is good enough. Because sometimes I think we do need to hear it's good enough.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough for somebody else, that can mean we can go, all right, okay, I can accept that. We can move on. But that recognition piece, I think is really important.
Yeah,
It actually motivates us to be better.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's the we say, oh right, if that's what you want, I'll do it again. But guess what? I'll try and do it a bit better next time.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is, not to go back to the word of impact again, but that recognition is almost having a double impact of it's getting you to stop where you are, but then it also helps you establish the guardrail or guide rail for the next time.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Am I hearing that right? I don't want to be putting words
but also,
back in your
I think
mouth,
it's about. I think for me as well, it's about the. Don't tell me what not to do. Tell me what to do. And again, I suppose that's for a lot of people. Like if you take a really simple example, I'm learning to play golf. Talk about Maximizer squeaking there. Never going to be the best at that. But you know, my husband takes me out occasionally, and he'll say, "Oh, don't do that." I said, "Don't tell me what not to do. Tell me, was that bit right? I'll do that again."
Yeah.
And so we've learned. His analytical has been getting in the way of the no, don't do that. Doesn't help me.
It's almost the old adage, and I know that having taken a few golf classes myself, it's, you know, some instructors will say, well, don't aim for that tree. Well, what's your natural inclination? Is you aim for that tree.
Pick up the tree. Yeah.
And, you know, it's the same thing in mountain biking. You look at where you want to be, not the tree you're trying to avoid. You look at the path, and that's where you put the bike. So I think that's a wonderful highlight for people trying to help maximizers. Tell them where you want to maximize the effort. Where's the path forward? Again, there's the forward word again. I think that's really helpful. Thank you.
I think you shared with me, and Michael, I think it was when you and I were talking about this understanding, if you're a leader and you have Maximizer and you have someone on your team who has Maximizer, your best, what you consider excellence and what they consider excellence may not match up. So in the way you shared that was really about helping to make sure that others are doing their best in that. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, it's quite, I mean, as you say it to me, it's quite reflective because, you know, we have to be mindful for leaders that, you know, are leading with Maximizer, that they have a responsibility to be leading in the best possible way, and their version of their best may not be the best that, or maybe the best that the other people on the team are giving, and it may not be, but Susan alluded to it before, but it's their best. So we just need to manage it, and this is why I think speaking in the language of strengths is so safe, that we can have these conversations from a place of which of my talents can help you here, and using people in your team to go, if you notice this with me, will you just tell me to stop? Because sometimes we don't know, no matter how mature it is or how long we're working on it.
Chad, do you feel a little bit of that too? Because I'm thinking like this is where our deliberatives have held us. You know, we may not be trying to get to the best, but we're trying to do the right thing and make the right decision and assess all the risks. And we can get caught in that same place of it's not ready. It's not ready
Right.
yet. I can't put this out. It's not ready yet.
Yeah, it's very much true. And I was also just going back to something, Michael, I think you said at the very beginning of this episode, when we were talking about sort of the negative impacts and kind of what helps you get out of it. You know, having those around us with other themes. You've mentioned before that you need people that help you execute. I know that I, you know, very much benefit from Jen's achiever in the same sort of way to get my deliberative to get into action. You've talked about having people around you with executing to get that maximizer to stop polishing and get into action. So I see a lot of similarities around all 3 or 4 themes here of, you know, how executing gets you out of it, how it helps you get started, how it helps you overcome that overthinking that I know for Jen and I, and it's no no small thread in any of our podcasts is you know, deliberative sometimes holds us up from doing a lot. I'm sensing the same sort of thing, that maximizer, sometimes you get held up by either the polishing or thinking, oh, I can't put this out because it's not best yet. So yeah, it is, you know, talking about that sort of best, is there a way that you think team leaders could put people with maximizer in positions to make sure that their best contribution comes out? And Michael, I'm gonna come right back to you on this one. Susan, obviously I'm gonna want to hear your thoughts on this, but you're just thinking about this maximizer and you know, team leaders that might be listening to this and be like, wow, I really need to put this place in a spot or in a role that they can bring their absolute best. What advice do you have for that team leader trying to put them in the right, you know, kind of piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want a maximizer to improve their performance, you've got to be able to put them in a position, whether it's long term, short term, or medium term, where they're asking themselves, what does the ideal outcome look like here? What's going to make this excellent? You know, how can I make this even better than it's already been done? What potential do I see? How can we improve this? These are all of the questions that a leader needs to be asking a maximizer, because that is music to their ears. It's literally saying yes. And also for a leader to say it to them and ask their opinion, you're building up that trust with them to go, they're asking me to help, and they know. And even in that, before you tell them they've done a good job, you're already suggesting to them that they add value because you're asking those questions.
Nice.
So
Excellent. Susan, what about you? What, you know, you got a team leader, they're thinking about where to put a person with maximizer within their team context. What advice?
I think I'm just going to add to what Michael said. I think it's not necessarily where you put them. I think it's how you use them.
Okay.
And I think, you know, reflecting on me and other people I know with the strength quite high up, it really is about focusing on positives. And it's not about blowing smoke. It's actually about a guiding light. You know, this is what's been done well. Give us more of it. And I know for me, you know, one of the most demotivating things, like we've all had those appraisal sessions where somebody said, oh, you know, you've done this well, you've done this well. But let's speak about the 3 things that you haven't done very well, and let's do more of them. I mean, I'd rather eat my toenails and focus on that. But if you give me a little bit of a, you know, guide to more of this, then I will mitigate the other side.
Yeah.
I suppose that is just the whole thing about strengths. But I really, as from the maximizer side, think that's where the energy lies.
You know, based on a couple of things you just said, an additional question pops to mind for me. And I know that Jen and I have had the same sort of conversation around responsibility. And that's when you think about when you use your maximizer the most, is it in cooperation with others, or does it really come out best when you're by yourself? And I know that's a little bit of a black and white, solution, question. But I know that, like, with my responsibility themes, I want to be left the heck alone. Like, give me the role, let me go away and do it, and then trust that I'm going to be responsible enough to bring it back at the appropriate time. I know that there are other themes that cannot help themselves, that they need people around them to do their best. I think about some of the developers I've connected with, includers, and those with relator talents are all about having people be part of the conversation and be in the mix in the moment. So this brings me back to Maximizer. Do you find that you love to use it more on your own or more in the context of being with people? And I don't have a person that I was going to go to first. I wanted to put it on the table and see who picked it up.
Yeah, that's a really easy one for me. It's neither. It's what the impact is.
Okay.
So I don't mean to bring it back to that, but either or I will be energized and fueled in once I know what the impact is going to be.
Got it.
And I love that you keep bringing it back to that impact, because this is an influencing theme. It's about creating the influence for others to move forward, or for something, that forward lean, like you guys have been talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Susan, I cut across you.
No, that's all right. I've got a very different reaction, actually. My initial reaction was definitely in collaboration with others, but actually I think it's a bit of both for me. There's something about being able to get a basis and then having collaboration with others, which then I think takes it to the next level with other ideas, other perspectives. Ideation, not very high. So getting in and getting other people's ideas just takes it to the next level for me. Okay. But the core, maybe a little bit of figuring it out for myself first.
Yeah. Okay. I think I was reflecting back to some of the things you're saying about, like red penning things, like sort of an editing thing tends to be a solo activity. I mean, you can do it collaboratively and, sit down side by side with people. And I was wondering if maybe that was going to be part of the answer.
That's actually quite a good one. I work with people or help them with career search, etc., and oftentimes do help them with their CV. Yep. Again, will you look at my CV? Do you really mean that?
Do you really mean that?
And whilst I've learned now that I won't necessarily red pen it and send it back to them, and they have a little fit over it.
A heart attack.
I will do the red penning myself, and then the best way to get a quality outcome is through the discussion.
Got it.
And what do they think? And I noticed this. How would this work for them? Yeah. So that's the both thing going on there.
Yeah. And that goes right back to Michael's comment about impact. You're really looking for the final impact of, well, what's this document going to eventually do for you? So I appreciate.
Well, so like you don't want to be spending your time on something that's of no value to anybody.
Right.
Right.
That's not what maximizers I think about.
Yeah.
That kills us. I think that's the thing that, I remember having a job years and years ago where I thought I wanted to be a chef, and the chef had me chopping parsley for 8 hours, and that's all I done. And I didn't know the impact of that parsley being chopped, and it was soul destroying. And looking back now, that was because it was like, what's the purpose of this? What's this going to do? Other than put me in a box and keep me quiet.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that clarification. And I
Yeah.
think it's really telling that it does come all back to the impact. So whether that's done in more of a solo activity or a collaborative, I really appreciate that clarification, because yeah, it's just been something I've been thinking about with a number of the other themes and some people I've been coaching recently. So as we start to think about wrapping this up, I know Jen and I have learned a lot. We could probably keep going. I know my learner would love to ask a zillion other questions. But for the sake of our learners, we're going to sort of bring this in for a landing. To do so, I'm wondering if the two of you, based on this conversation and other thoughts you've had around Maximizer, if you were to think about the one, two, maybe three key takeaways that people should really know about Maximizer, or something you really want to highlight, maybe even re-reflect on out of our conversation today. Susan, I'd love to hear what your takeaways are first, and then Michael, I'd love to add yours to the collection. But just something that people can really think about, even if we were to do this as like a short, what do we highlight?
So I think it's almost like a little bit of a broken record for me. Quality is key.
Okay.
High standards are key. But it's not, it is about the outcome, but it's also about the engagement, the effort of somebody who's striving to be their best, do their best. So it's not just about the outcome for me, it's also about how much engagement has there been along the way. And every time I think about this theme, that's kind of what comes in.
Nice.
It's like it's the phrase, shoot for the stars. Was it shoot for the moon and you might land among the stars?
Yes.
That particular one.
And I think when you've told me that before, you said it's their stars, not your stars.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Michael, top 2 or 3 takeaways you think our listeners should walk away with?
Yeah, so I'm going to come at it a little bit differently from Susan. So some is going to be helpful and some is just watch out for people to be aware of. Maximizers are always going to come from a place of wanting to be the best. And they may need assistance in stopping that spin that they're in, because the desire to want to be the best. So watch out for that with them, and acknowledge it with them, so that they are aware of it, and help them to move on and talk about SA impact. Susan talks about the stars and the moon, and I'm thinking of, it's the journey, not the destination. It's the journey where the learning's going to happen. It's the journey where it's going to get better each way. It's where things are going to change. And for people that are out there with Maximizer, either in raw or mature state, be grateful for the team or talent of Maximizer, because you are there wanting the world to be a better place. And the impact that you have on either one person or 2 person or 3 people, it's, that there is better out there. So, be mindful of that. That's what I would say to all the Maximizers out there. And to the leaders who are leading Maximizers. Be very grateful that you've got a Maximizer on your team.
Awesome. And I'd just like to add one highlight that I've really learned from this, which is that forward lean that I think Susan first brought up, that we've talked a lot about, is it's grounded in the present, but that it leans forward. And so I wanted to add that one, because that's a big learning for me.
And I think mine was really that, like, the intention behind it. It isn't to fix, it's to make greater, to make better, to do better, that strive for excellence. So I really loved that distinction. Makes a big difference in my mind for me with Maximizers. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So Jen had the pleasure of welcoming you both and introducing you. So I'm going to be the first one to say thank you very much for spending your time with us. This has been super informative. I'm also super grateful, given that this is my 24th theme, that I've been able to learn so much more and be in a better position to coach people like yourselves that have Maximizer high in their theme orders. So just my extreme gratitude for everything you shared with us today. For our listeners, if you liked this episode, and we encourage you to leave us a review, leave us comments if you're on LinkedIn. We encourage you to click the subscribe button, because we will keep bringing awesome coaches like Michael and Susan back to explore future episodes, to explore other Clifton Strengths themes. So please subscribe to us, and remember that you can find us in both podcast form on acast.com, and Jen and I both put out this wonderful video on our YouTube channels. And so you can find us there as well if you want to see us have this awesome conversation.
And if you want to get in touch with either of our guests that we have, we've included their contact information in the show notes. And also, you are always welcome to reach out to Chad and me on our respective links, also included in the show notes. Thank you both for coming.
Yes.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting, encouraging you to keep playing to your strengths.
And I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching, encouraging you to be uniquely you.
Thank you, and have a great day.